even a big hospital like Mayo Clinic may buy the $20,000, but also buy a few of those $500 and give it to individual physicians. There is no cannibalization there either. The third pathway by which it comes is there are new applications that are opened up by this product. This is the example of accidents on a highway. When there is an accident on a highway, there is no way the $20,000 machine can fit into the ambulance. The $500 machine just simply creates a new application. The fourth and the final way the product comes in is the way cannibalization happens. And it happens this way. By the way, in the US, GE had 3 price points for their ECG machine. There is a $100 price point which gives 100% performance. Then there is a $90 price point which gives 90% performance, and then there is an $80 price point which gives 80% performance. By the way, the mistake GE and all companies make, when they come into India, they take the $80 price point at 80% performance and water it down to 70% performance at $70 price. When you water it down that way, you don't capture the Indian market. What Indians want are 50% performance at 5% price. That's what they want. What I mean by 50% performance is the $500 ECG machine can only do one function, whereas the $20,000 ECG machine can do hundreds of functions. So the $20,000 ECG machine can do a lot of things that the $500 ECG machine cannot do. The one thing the $500 ECG machine can do, it does at very good quality. Therefore, that $500 ECG machine is never attractive to the main hospitals in the US. What they really want is at least a 80% performance at $80 price. So when you bring the $500 ECG machine, the main hospitals are not interested in that product. What happens is GE over time invested in the $500 ECG machine, increased the cost to, let us say, $2,000, but the performance moved from 50% to 80%. Suddenly, the main hospitals are interested because you can deliver the 80% performance at a $30 price point. Then there is cannibalization. This is the way I will put it. There is never 100% cannibalization. We have seen this happen in all industries. Even today, mainframe computers exist with PCs. The big copiers exist with small copiers. There is never 100% cannibalization. But cannibalization is a funny thing, because there is cost of cannibalization, there is also cost of inaction. Because you don't bring out the product doesn't mean it's not going to be brought out by somebody. So it's the job of the CEO to articulate why the cost of inaction is higher than cost of cannibalization. It's a tough sell, but that's what Jeffrey Mills had to do. Convince the organization as to why they should bring the $500 ECG machine into the US and invest in it to improve its performance. It's never easy, but that's the job of the CEO.
Usually patenting is seen as a tool to safeguard business interests. Taking this concept forward, in maybe next decade or next 20 years, what is your thought on patenting as a tool to either support this, or will it create a hindrance in this particular approach to doing business?
I'm not able to hook up with your question. Can you speak into that mic?
Yeah, can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah, good.
Yeah. My question is this, sir. Patenting, till now has been more of a safeguard for business interests. Maybe a pharmaceutical company comes up with a product and, they want it to last for a longer time so that they can survive, by the time they come up with something new. Now, when you talk of something like this reverse innovation, what's your take on patenting being a barrier or patenting being, a tool which will help this particular ideology going forward?
I think patenting is always a useful way to erect entry barriers around your intellectual property. Therefore, certainly when you come up with a $500 ECG machine, a $30 artificial leg, you should create the patent because that creates the entry barrier. This is what I would say. Because you have patent doesn't mean somebody else can't run circles around you. Therefore, innovation should never stop. You should continue to put money to make your product, refine your product, therefore you always are one step ahead of the game. In fact, a good example is Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is one place where people copy each other. Every innovation that you come up with is immediately commoditized by somebody. And the survivors in Silicon Valley are ones who are constantly innovating around their own innovation. Therefore, yes, patent, but don't stop innovation. Any other questions? Yes, some other hand was going up, I think.
Sir, you very interestingly pointed about the healthcare, innovation in healthcare. Similarly, in India, we have a university education, which is also on the verge of rising cost. So are there any opportunities where we can have our own Indian education which can go to the world?
Absolutely, without a question. In fact, I teach at Dartmouth. At Dartmouth, our cost of education is $75,000 a year. So a 4-year degree would be $300,000. That means very rich can afford it, very poor can afford it because they get full scholarship, but the middle class is squeezed. Now, I asked myself the question, in fact, the cost of education in the US is going faster than the cost of healthcare. In fact, education industry in the US is in even bigger crisis than the healthcare industry. And you stop for a moment and ask the question, why is the cost of education so high? I say there are 3 reasons why the cost of education is so high. The first is we bundle the product. That means we ask the students to pay for teaching and research together. By the way, when faculty do teaching, they generate revenues. When the faculty do research, they generate 0 revenues. But the student is asked to pay for a part of the activity of the faculty which does not generate revenue. Therefore, the cost for the student is very high. That's the first reason. The second is, in the US, we do education 100% residential. When you do 100% residential, you have to build dorms, you have to build labs, you have to build cafeteria, you have to have a football stadium, you have to have classroom. The physical infrastructure brings the cost up. The third reason why the cost of education is so high is our admission process is such that we exclude people who don't like the system. And we only include people who don't mind the inefficiency. In fact, at Dartmouth, we take a lot of pride in saying we reject 95% of the people who apply. In fact, we are not even nice. For 95% of the people, we say, get lost. Can you imagine another industry which turns away 95% of the customers? In fact, I like to call our director of admissions not director of admissions, but director of rejections. You reject enough people, you end up with a class. And the people we include are people who don't mind the inefficiency. So we have a beautiful system going. Now, you shift the scene for a moment to India. India needs to educate not just one or two, but we need to educate millions and millions of people who come out of high school. In fact, our high school graduation rate itself is pathetic. But even the people who come out of high school, we don't have enough universities to absorb them. One thing I know, we cannot use the American model. American model is built on principle of exclusion. We have to build an educational model which is built on principle of inclusion. And the principle of inclusion should be at a world-class quality. We can't give poor quality either. So the key is, how can you offer Dartmouth quality education at $2,000? That's the challenge. And I really believe India can really lead the world in not just K through 12, but also higher education. And once we come up with that business model, then you can, actually in the US, we are facing the same crisis. US education has become so unaffordable, a lot of Americans who are left out of the education system. So therefore, we have the ability to really take it over there. And I have some ideas as to what we can do in business model innovation, but the answer to your question is absolutely education industry is ripe for breakthrough innovation. Maybe let me just close with one observation and then maybe you can say something at the end. To me, reverse innovation is about a very simple idea. And the simple idea is globalization of knowledge. Reverse innovation at the heart says no country has monopoly on knowledge. No country has monopoly on innovation. America has lots and lots of capabilities, but it does not have monopoly on knowledge. In fact, if you stop to think about it, the whole great country of America was built on the idea of globalization of knowledge and innovation. In fact, America was built on inviting people from all over the world to come to the US. Isn't not that principle on which the great country of America was built? Certainly, from India, how many millions of Indians have gone to help America build? I certainly have benefited. Millions of people like me have benefited. I didn't go to the US because I had lots of resources. In fact, I come from a very humble family. It's not because I had a lot of resources America invited me. It's because I can do some contribution to the American economy. In fact, I still remember in the late 70s when I boarded a plane from India to the US, I had $11 in my pocket. It was not a non-stop flight. It stopped in London. And I saw Cadbury's milk chocolate. I've never seen chocolate in my life before. So I was tempted. But it costed $6. So I was kind of agonized. Should I $6 out of my $11 to buy that bar of chocolates? Then I told myself, well, if I landed in the US with $5 or $11, what difference does it make? So I bought that bar of chocolate. America, people like that spend 50% of their assets on a bar of chocolate. America was built not based on resources, but based on ideas. And those ideas they accepted from all over the world. We need to get back to the same spirit. If America has to remain healthy, strong, and vibrant for next 200 years, they have to have the same humility about being interested in the problems of poor countries as they are interested in the problem of rich countries. Another way I can say the same thing is, today the number one problem in the world is income inequality. The number one problem in the world. The difference in income between the rich and poor have reached alarming proportions. In fact, the richest 100 people in the world have more wealth than the wealth of the bottom 3.6 billion combined. I want you to think about that for a second. 100 lousy individuals have more wealth than 3,600 million people. This is not sustainable. And there are two ways to cross income inequality. One way to cross income inequality, and the extreme form of that is communism. And communism attacks income inequality by making everybody equal, by making everybody poor. One thing we know, it doesn't work. It has never worked. The collapse of Soviet Union is a great example. And we embraced in India in 1947 a version of that. And we essentially bankrupted the country. Communism does not work. There is another mode to reduce income inequality, this is capitalism. The American form of 20th century capitalism has also miserably failed us. Because the American form of capitalism, we pluck the low-hanging fruit. Essentially, in a way, for the people who can afford to pay for that product. Thereby, actually, they have widened the income disparity. In fact, take for instance India. In 1993, we embraced this economy. We embraced the form of capitalism. Certainly, the pie has grown in India. It was about 200 million, 2 trillion. So in the last